I want to take you all back to E3 2014, on Xbox's press conference where the director of Platinum Games, Hideki Kamiya, came to the stage and announced a game exclusively for the Xbox One. A game he had dreamed of making for a long time, inspired by his love of dragons as a child. This game was Scalebound, and oh my, did it impress me. It was only a CGI trailer, but from what I could gather, this looked like a game right up my alley. A big world where you can explore and take down huge enemies alongside your dragon companion. What's there not to like? I eagerly anticipated this game's gameplay showcase. For the whole year, I would constantly check for updates, but alas, we didn't get anything until August 2015 at Gamescom, where finally they unveiled the gameplay, and oh my goodness, was I impressed again. It was everything I wanted this game to be. A cool looking world, fun combat, jumping on huge monster enemies to take them down, all alongside, you guessed it, your dragon companion. This is exactly why it pained me so deeply that in 2017 Microsoft announced they would be ending their partnership with Platinum Games on this project, scrapping Scalebound and cancelling it. This was the second time that the head of Xbox, Phil Spencer, broke my heart. You sick man. You sick man. With the recent leaks saying that Scalebound may return, I decided to make this video where I tell you all about why Scalebound was cancelled and if it is at all a possibility for it to return. Let's begin. There were a few rumoured reasons for the cancellation of this game. Mostly it's speculation, so take everything I say from here on out with a grain of salt. It's easy to blame Microsoft for all of this, considering that a billion-dollar company and Platinum Games is a tiny little studio, but apparently both parties were at fault. It seemed as though the two just couldn't work together. They couldn't see eye to eye and aim to make a project together, but rather Microsoft wanted the game to go one way, whereas Platinum Games wanted the game to go another way. Platinum Games didn't like how Microsoft tried to input certain things into the game that they didn't want. I assume this would have been the multiplayer aspect for the game, which by the way was really cool. It pinned you against a huge monster with 3 other friends and their dragons, and I guess you just take it all down together as these boss fights. I think that sounds cool. Maybe in practice it wouldn't have been so good, but we'll never know, I guess. Hideki Kamiya was also stated to be extremely stressed out over this project and thus took a holiday during the middle of development, which Microsoft was probably not too happy about. Again, this is something you can see both sides of. One, you can see Microsoft saying, hey, we're paying you, we want you, the creative director, the person in charge, to oversee the game and make it great. Whereas Hideki Kamiya was probably thinking, I'm too stressed out, I can't deal with making this game right now, so if I take some time off and come back, I can make it better. Again, this is something from both sides that you kind of have to understand. Platinum Games was also working on other projects at the time alongside Scalebound, and Microsoft probably felt as though they were being taken advantage of as they were paying the studio to make the game, but they were splitting their staff and assets between multiple projects. Again, this is something you have to look at from both points of view. Microsoft is thinking, we're paying you to make our game, make the game. You splitting your staff and making different projects isn't going to make the game any faster, and you're just going to be wasting more of our money, whereas Platinum Games is probably thinking, we've already committed to this game or these games, how many games we're making, I forgot. We need to finish them, people are waiting for them. So again, it's a both points of view kind of thing. It just sucks because this was a game that Microsoft really wanted, because they've been trying to build up their Japanese arsenal of games for a long time, considering that Japanese games are on the rise. But they also wanted to make it more Western because Japanese games aren't really all that popular. I know, you have your Final Fantasies and whatnot, but for the most part, Japanese games tend to be quite a niche market in the West. Phil Spencer revealed the actual reason for the cancellation was not because of issues with the game, creative differences within the team, or even lack of resources. No, the game was cancelled because Phil Spencer and his team believed that the expectations for the game were so high that even the best effort by Platinum Games wouldn't have been up to the pre-release standards set for it by fans, even if the game were objectively incredible. Spencer went on to explain how the early announcement for the game, which would have featured a badass main character and a Scalebound dragon partner defeating the forces of evil, hyped Scalebound up so much that the developers couldn't possibly put out a game that would exceed expectations. So basically, Microsoft felt that the game wasn't going to be as good as they promised and therefore scrapped it altogether. Wow, what a load of bull. You're telling me that you put so much time, effort, and I presume a crap ton of money into a project for around 3 years only to cancel it whilst it was, I'm guessing, around 70% done? I mean, there's no way in roughly 3 years that the game wouldn't be at the very least halfway finished. In my opinion, this is all PR talk, because if the game not being of high enough standards was the reason for its cancellation, then why was State of Decay 2, Sea of Thieves and Crackdown 3 released? Don't get me wrong, they are good games. I consider them good. I like State of Decay 2, Sea of Thieves and Crackdown 3, okay? They're not masterpieces, they're not amazing games, I just consider them good. However, they were games that definitely failed to live up to the fans' desires and the expectations that we set out for them. So what's different here? So here's what I think happened. I think it was a mixture of all of the above. A bit of a cop-out on my end, but I feel as though it was mainly due to the fact that the two companies just couldn't see eye to eye. They couldn't see a clear goal of where this project was heading. Microsoft, and this is speculation, but I feel pretty confident in saying that, they probably wanted the game to have more multiplayer aspects and some form of microtransaction so it can add longevity of the game, and it can also make them more money, whereas Platinum Games is usually just a single player focused studio. They make great hack and slash and are renowned for being one of the most consistently good Japanese studios at making games. So I feel as though these two just couldn't see a clear vision of where the game should have gone, and that is why they cancelled it.
You're up, big guy. God, what the hell was that for? I'd get off if you'd ask me to. Use your words.
So now I've told you what I believe to be the most plausible reason as to why Scalebound was cancelled, let's talk about returning, because no doubt you've probably heard rumours that the game is going to be returning, but not for the Xbox One. Instead, it will return for the Nintendo Switch. Now, Platinum Games has had a really good partnership with Nintendo, so I'm sure they're working on a game besides just Astral Chain. But the reason why people think that Scalebound is going to be going to the Nintendo Switch is because some journalists and insiders have claimed this to be so. Now, there was a person who used to work at Scalebound that came out on Twitter and said that he basically thought this was a load of crap and he doesn't believe it. He also said that the project itself, working on Scalebound, was terrible for him. He said it was a learning experience, but it was a terrible process, which again leads me to believe that it wasn't because the game wasn't good enough, but rather the relationship between the companies just weren't at a good point. So there are some issues if Platinum Games does want to make Scalebound for the Nintendo Switch, one being the IP. Now, whilst the trademark for the name Scalebound is free to use, the IP, the intellectual property, however, still is owned by Microsoft. So there's a few ways they can get around this. One, they could buy the IP of Microsoft, because Microsoft doesn't seem to be doing anything with it, so at least then they can get some money back. Two, they can make a game similar to Scalebound, but not Scalebound itself. So they can have the same premise of open world, riding a dragon, and fighting big monsters, but they can't actually make the game too similar to Scalebound. But to me, I don't really mind too much as long as we still get the same premise. When this game got cancelled, I was distraught as I was looking forward to this game more than anything else. Even though people insulted the game and said it was basically how to train your dragon, the guy with the headphones looked cheesy, and the frame rate was choppy, even though the footage shown was pre-alpha, which is kind of ridiculous to make fun of a game's frame rate for being pre-alpha. But even though all those things were the negatives, as what people claimed, I still loved the game and the idea of it. So for me personally, I don't care how this game comes back as long as it does, in whichever shape or form it may be. And even though I'd be more upset that it's coming back from the Nintendo Switch purely because it's less powerful, so the detail in the world and the graphics and things like that won't be up to the standards that we are used to with the current consoles being, you know, all powerful and stuff, and you've got great games coming out looking like, you know, God of War, and more impressively Red Dead Redemption 2. But the gameplay should still be the fun Platinum style gameplay we're used to. And you know, when you're on a dragon and you're gliding around breathing fire upon your enemies, there's nothing more you can really ask for, is there?